Good morning. You joined us in the middle of a press scrum around David Malmo-Levine, one of the three defendants in the Canadian Supreme Court cases heard by the Canadian Supreme Court. The three cases were one, simple possession, which involved Randy Kane; two, a harm reduction, which David was talking about in terms of selling marijuana properly; and then in Chris Clay's case involving seedlings and seeds. And the rulings against us were on all three cases. However, the court split 6-3 in favor of ruling against, put it this way, split 6-3, upholding the laws against simple possession. Now, what David did here for the benefit of the press, Canadian Press Assembled, was David said, does somebody here want to buy a joint from me for $5? So I handed David $5, and so I have helped David commit a felony this morning. I'm now committing a what is now still a crime in Canada by holding this. But what the Supreme Court did in immediate effect is to say that selling this is the same as selling heroin and cocaine, and that it will have to remain illegal, will remain in the same markets, and will, of course, continue to give Canada, and particularly this province of British Columbia, an extremely bad problem with hard drug use. The Dutch separated the markets years ago and have a much lower rate of hard drug use than does Canada, and in the Netherlands, the average age of heroin addicts is 40 and rising. In the United States and Canada, it's about 20 and falling. So this is something that will have and continue to have a negative impact on the health and safety of the people of Canada for the indefinite future. Now, what we're waiting on is the ruling itself, which is about 100 pages, I understand. Now, the fine print in this ruling is very important because the court is in effect saying we defer to Parliament on this. At least this is certainly this is what they were saying on the simple possession part of it. But that the idea is that the Parliament should decide this. And in that regard, in some ways, I agree with the court. And this is something that the Parliament should decide. It should have decided it a long time ago. It should, of course, first off, do what we will be doing later on today and bringing you reports on, is the wording of this decision. But the key point is that what it is they are going to be saying to the Parliament. If they say these laws are stupid and an abomination, but this is something that is not within the purview of the court, then the Parliament, which is set to debate a phony decrim law, actually then has to debate the substance. Now, whether or not the members of Parliament will actually read the decision, inasmuch as members of the House of Commons, many of them, did not seem to read their own report, much less the Senate report, that remains to be seen. But this is not the celebration we'd been hoping for this morning, but even if everything had gone our way, let's not delude ourselves. If everything had gone our way this morning, it would simply have been the next stage in the battle going forward, because Canada is one country, and it happens to be adjacent to the prohibitionist superpower, hyperpower, and we're going to have to deal with that. We would have had to deal with that in any case. So the question is, will the Parliament of Canada rise to the occasion which the Supreme Court of Canada has forced upon them, is presented to them? I think a lot of the politicians in Parliament were hoping, maybe the Supreme Court will bail us out on this the way they have on other complicated issues. We'll let them handle the controversial stuff. And arguably, at least in the case of simple possession, I think they should have, because the Parliament has failed miserably in it. They've had a year's time in which to deal with this issue. That it was almost a year ago that the Supreme Court told the government to go away for 6 months and get its act together and decide whether it's for or against decriminalization. They never really could. So the Parliament has failed to act, the government has failed to act, now the Supreme Court has said you must act. Now, that doesn't mean they will, because separation of powers means that, in point of fact, that maybe they won't. This may come back to the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court, for example, reversed itself on the issue of private consensual between homosexual couples. They reversed themselves within a period of about 15 years. It took over 50 years for them to reverse themselves on racial segregation, but things move much faster today. So it's quite possible the Canadian Supreme Court in just a few years would go from 6-3 in favor to 5-4 or whatever in favor of that if the Parliament continues not to act or continues to make things worse. And there will be new arguments, of course, come up. But we'll have to go into the decision itself, and we'll come back to you on that this morning after we've been through the decision. John Conroy, who is counsel for Randy Kane, will be here in a couple of hours. John is the great lawyer here in British Columbia who handles so many marijuana cases and was counsel for Randy Kane and took this to the Supreme Court. And I know that he'll be very disappointed, but he can explain things better when he gets here. Well, he'll be here in a couple of hours. So I hope you'll stay with us through the morning. We'll be talking to Mark Emery in a bit. I'll be talking to David malmo-Levine, get his reaction right now. There's still a press scrum going on with the people who have more primitive means of communication other than the internet, so they have to do things differently. So we're going to stand by.
Because it'll involve more people in Montreal and Vancouver and other places of tolerance getting fines, more people going to jail because of not paying fines, and worse and worse, the fines will increase every year. There'll be forced treatment. It's kind of like what Keith Martin suggested in 1997. His version of decrim is sounding more and more like Hetty Fry's version, whereas the recalcitrant repeat offenders, the people who can't give it up after 1 or 2 tickets, those people will be forced into some treatment programs. That's like Singapore. That's insane. We don't want an Orwellian police state drug war nightmare. No, we want Holland. We don't want Singapore.
Now, what happens now with your charge? I mean, obviously you've been convicted.
No more punishment. I've already been supervised for 2 years. I was kind of humiliating, but it was incarceration. I just had some conditions I had to appear to be following.
Okay, so your sentence was what then?
2 years to be spent in the community under certain conditions. Couldn't deal pot, couldn't smoke pot, couldn't travel on political agendas, only visiting relatives, et cetera, et cetera.
So it was a conditional sentence?
Conditional sentence, yes.
How old are you, David?
32.
32, okay. And what are you up to now?
What do I do?
Yeah, well,
I work at Pot TV. I work at Pot TV and I sell guano, organic fertilizer. The other part of
how appropriate.
exactly. The other part is worrying about lung cancer. The reason people get lung cancer from smoking tobacco isn't the tobacco; it's the chemical fertilizers. That's where the radioactivity is. That's where the evidence of harm comes from. There's a lot of evidence for that. It's piling up now, and I just think that if you encourage organic growing, you've taken care of 99% of people's concerns over damage to lungs with marijuana. And the other is potency. And with these fertilizers, you get both. Very potent cannabis, and it's organic.
Looks like that guy was trying to get all of you. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
You've completed then your sentence?
Oh, yeah, they're done punishing me. I just wanted the laws off the books.
And when were you sentenced?
It was 1998.
Okay, and that was for selling?
Yep.
So 1998 to 2001 you were on your conditional sentence?
Yeah, basically. 2000 anyway.
And now you sort of hope you'll get busted again?
I don't hope I get busted again. I hope I open up a... preventative medicine hasn't been argued yet. Hope I open up a preventative medicine outlet and it's left alone like the Compassion Club is left alone. Because all marijuana use is medicine. Here, big message. Even healthy people use medicine. And stress, depression, fatigue, loss of appetite, lack of sleep are all medical conditions that healthy people suffer that cannabis can mitigate. It's maybe everything has to be under a medical context. That's just what needs to happen, and everything will be in a medical context because all recreation is a form of medicine. To relax after work is a form of medicine. When you're self-medicating with alcohol, you're still self-medicating, even if it's alcohol. Even if it's caffeine, you're stimulating yourself with caffeine. It's still medicine, even if it's not considered medicine.
Can I get your spelling of your name?
M-A-L-M-O-L-E-V-I-N-E. Open up my...
Are you available to come outside and do my at 7:30?
Sure.
We're just up the street. The only hit we could get is just up the street.
Right, yeah. Missed 4 calls, yeah, okay.
One of those is probably me.
Which are you, 331-2766?
That's CKNW.
Okay.
That's my other job. That's not me today.
You're 6626,000? That's
No,
CBC.
that's CBC.
Okay, so I'm gonna
8642.
call a couple of people and I'll be upstairs.
I'll just come up and...
Sure.
We just gotta get up there.
Yeah, sure.
All right, people of Pot TV land, I apologize for no audio since no one wants to talk today. I'm just going to stand here and... oh, lovely. Okay, they're going to do another piece in front of this thing, so enjoy.